welcome to Moving On Digital Meetings. On our show today, they live in Paris, Nantes, Madrid, New York, Seattle or Montreal, aged between 18 to 34, and they've shared their vision of mobility in a post-COVID world via the Moving On Mobility survey. After months of lockdown and restricted mobility, what are the consequences of this unprecedented crisis on their desires, needs, and expectations? The outcomes of this survey, carried out among urban youth committed to the environment, will be presented to you by Kantar and members of Moving On, an insightful trend book.
They want to see hybrid mobility.
Just like us, they want to get involved.
Pragmatic rather than idealistic.
They have the ability to make things happen.
They refuse to discard any form of transport.
They want to be heard. So, how about we listen?
Also, we will share with you the findings from the zero-emission mobility process, an unprecedented approach aimed at supporting and speeding up the building of a zero-emission mobility European value chain. Teams from Moving On and Capgemini, together with all the partners engaged in this venture, will share with you the concrete initiatives identified during the workshop.
As zero-emission mobility develops, we also need more, better adapted infrastructure to support new usages.
So zero-emission mobility has to become a reality. The question is no longer why or what to do, but how and how quickly.
Finally, you will discover the new format of the 2021 Moving On Summit, the World Summit on Sustainable Mobility. A new, unique digital experience from June 1st to June 4th, live from Montreal, Paris and Singapore. 4 insightful days to get inspired, build your network and invite mobility stakeholders to commit to collective actions. Welcome to Moving On Digital Meetings. Welcome to the Moving On Digital Meetings. My name is Asha Sumputh. I'm a television journalist and I'm glad to welcome you all here live from Paris. Today we'll present the results of the mobility survey that you've just heard earlier before, seen by the young generation between 18 and 34 in various cities, Paris, Nantes, Madrid, Montreal, New York and Seattle in a post-COVID world. The survey was led by Kantar with the participation of Accenture, CGI, Michelin and Microsoft. To understand the consequences of this crisis after months of lockdown and constrained mobility, I'm joined today by Guillaume Saint from Kantar and Michel Georges from Moving On. Hello, gentlemen. It's great to have you today.
Hello,
well, as you can see, they're wearing their masks and they will remove their masks to speak, so we are at quite a distance here. So thank you for having us here, Michel. So I will start with you. Probably, can you tell us about this survey? Why this survey? Why this choice of young urban people with, their environmental awareness and insights?
For Moving On, it was key to listen to young generation about their mobility expectation. As an ecosystem, we decided to join forces with 5 of our key Movin'On LAB partners to conduct this study. It was, you say it already, but I want to repeat it. It was Accenture, Microsoft, CGI, Kantar as a service specialist, of course, and Michelin. And we will discover today the insights of this in very, very exciting and inspiring survey.
Right, so we're getting to learn more during this show today, but Guillaume, I have a question for you. Given the context today, the pandemic, COVID-19, we have to speak about it. So did it act as a brake or a trend accelerator, regarding the mobility concerns, or simply a game changer, maybe?
So,
Tell us.
Actually, it's very interesting because it acted as both. So on the one hand, it really acted as a brake and it stopped the momentum that we've seen before the COVID when it comes to the shared mobility usage. So for instance, people, and especially this young generation, used car sharing, bike sharing far less than before. It was also a kind of brake towards the transformation from leaving the individual car for the daily commute to public transport or shared mobility. So to that perspective, it's been very much, a brake. And it's been the case for the majority of the population, but it has been also the case for this young, urban, environmental, I would say, friendly generation. And the second thing interesting is that it also acted as a very important accelerator of some emerging trends that we've seen before. The most obvious one among this Generation Z, as we call them, is very much the increase, the acceleration of the move towards open air, healthy mode of transport, like for instance walking and cycling. So to that perspective, it's been very interesting as well to see that in the cities where the government, the local municipalities helped to promote this kind of healthy, soft mode of mobility, it worked very well, and the young generation really adhere to it.
So an acceleration given the context in all the cities that we've been speaking about. So what are the new trends, Michel, in mobility among young people? And how does this Gen Z that Guillaume was just mentioning, how are they different from the previous generation?
There are various. This Gen Z wants to change things, but they are not ready to make any sacrifices. They want to maintain pleasure in their life. They are looking for a better quality of life than the other generations, but they are responsible for the planet. For them, the planet is really key to save it. They want to continue to discover the world, as we were in our generation, and they don't give up long-distance travel. When fast trains or carpooling are available, of course they will prefer it. But they are not ready to stop taking planes when there is no choice for them. Mm-hmm. So they will do it, but they are responsible that they cannot do whatever they want when they want. We can say, and we'll come back with Guillaume probably later on that, we can say that they are the first multimodal generation. They want to travel differently. They want to travel less often, probably, but for longer trips. And maybe it's for us a more surprising insight. They are ready to combine tourism and work in one single trip. They don't want to split things. They consider they are one single person and they want to enjoy all the trips by combining work and tourism. It's very, very interesting.
Absolutely, really interesting. I would like to speak about this multimodality that Michel just mentioned. So they're looking for efficiency, positive impact. Tell us more.
Yeah, actually it's true that they are very much, the first generation that is truly multimodal for various reasons. The first reason is that their mindset. Their mindset, they are very open. They are very agile in switching from one alternative to another one. They want all. They don't want to, as Michel mentioned, they don't want just to give up some things, some mode of transport that can be very efficient. On the other way, they are also extremely agile with the digital application. So they are born digital, and so therefore it's not anyhow a problem for them to switch from mobility application from a public transporter to mobile application from a car sharing or bike sharing service provider. So they are very agile, and so they can very much manipulate all the different options, and they can make the best choice according to their criteria. The first is, of course, efficiency, affordability, and also the environmental impact of their choice. The second thing also I would like to mention, in this quest of truly effectiveness in efficiency in the mobility choices, they will not just push back the car. The individual car can be a solution for them. And so they will not totally giving up this idea of using a car. Also, very interestingly, for part of this young generation, the car remains very attractive, very appealing, and it remains a symbol of status, a very important stage of their life. So I think it's a fake idea to believe that they will really push back the idea of owning or using a car, but they are much more reasonable than the previous generation. They really would like to embrace fully the electrification of cars, so that those cars are clean and do not damage.
Responsible.
Absolutely. So that's very much what we have observed.
Oh, that's very interesting to hear. Probably, could you just share with us the key levers that will have a major impact on the future of mobility?
Yeah, so when talking to this Generation Z, it's interesting because the first big trend that they believe will have a massive impact on the future of mobility is technology. Technology to power much more, in a much more clean way, the vehicles, so through electrification, but also the technology to make the overall mobility journey much more seamless, much more pleasurable. So that's the first one. The second one is definitely what I call the local consumption. So people during the lockdown realized that it's much better to try to consume products that have been manufactured, that have vegetables that have grown in a nearby area around where they live. The third one is the fast development of work or study from home, because this lockdown imposes to all of us, a new kind of lifestyle. So working from home, staying from home, and we first thought it was possible, but for the young generation, it's also very pleasant. So that's very interesting. And the fourth one, the fourth dimension, the fourth trend is, as I would call that, the shared and circular economy, because this is very much resonating with their values of social responsibility, of environment responsibility. So this is very much the fourth driver. And if you combine all of them, very interestingly, what do we get? We get a generation that is very happy to live within a radius of 15 minutes around where they live. And they can be very happy to have a daily life organized in this radius. So that's what we call the 15 around me new lifestyle. And they really embrace this new thing.
That's interesting to hear. I want to refer back to what Michel said earlier on the notion of sacrifice, right? Yeah. So what is your young people ready to make sacrifices in their quest for sustainable mobility?
Yeah, so it's very interesting, and I would like, to build up a little bit on what you mentioned, Michel. They are ready to make compromises. Of course, they are ready to make compromises. They are ready, to take a fast train instead of a plane when it's possible. It will take longer time. Okay, but still they are willing to do that. If
they have the alternative, the option, they will obviously think about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. They are absolutely fine to combine clean mobility solution with airplane in order to have an overall trip abroad that is still more, I would say, that will limit more the carbon emission. But on the other hand, they will not do sacrifices. This generation, as I mentioned earlier, is a generation that wants everything. Doesn't want just to be prevented from doing something that really inspires them, that really give them a big pleasure. And travel abroad, discover the world, get inspiration from new places, new culture, meeting new people, having new experiences is something they will never give up.
Right, it's part of their field of interests.
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing that, Guillaume. I would like to speak about the use of data. That's an important topic. So how does this generation of city dwellers, make use of their data, to optimize their travel or other?
Yeah, so that's I would call that a kind of a love and hate or love and fear relationship. Because on the one hand, this generation, again, that is born digital, do see massive value of everything that is based on data, because it creates much more seamless, much more personalized service, and it is applied to, of course, mobility. They see big data, fantastic, when it comes to make car autonomous and prevent and allows to reduce the accident on the street. So they really know, they feel it's wonderful. On the other hand, they are also very concerned about the possible, I would say, deviation with the kind of misuse of the big data, or the risk of personal data leaking. So that's a kind of love and hate, or probably more love and fear relationship. And to that perspective, I think it's absolutely essential that the companies that own and leverage those data do that with a very responsible way and in a very transparent way to diminish this anxiety and to get the trust of this generation.
Thank you. Very enlightening insights, Guillaume. So we have with us remotely connected Arnaud Poutignan from Microsoft, which was one of, of the main partners in this venture. Arnaud, hello. It's great to have you on the show.
Do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. How are you today, Arnaud? Good?
Very, very nice, and very happy to be with you live at distance, unfortunately, but very happy.
Yes, absolutely. We would have loved to have you here, but we know the context. So Arnaud, probably could you tell us why is it essential to have private sector players on board in this transition to more sustainable mobility?
Well, sustainability transportation, it's a broad project. And honestly, it's about sharing. We talk a lot of data already. So, of course, we can provide the technology, but we are talking about how technology can bring things to people, and people are moving in between cities, or of course between countries. So we can provide the data, the infrastructure, but of course it's essential for us to share the data and our knowledge with a broad ecosystem, public and private company.
Right. So Arnaud, can you tell us how is Microsoft actually taking part in this great multi-stakeholder challenge on sustainable development? I know you're doing a lot in this field.
Yeah, this ecosystem approach is deeply rooted in our way of working for advancing project. So Movin'On, of course, is one of the multiple example approach. We are doing that. So we have many projects where we are leading through this very same approach. We are part of many what we call public-private partnership. We work closely with cities, with country. And again, this problem can't be solved just at the city, country, or one company level. So we consider that the public authorities and companies are ready to work hand to hand to answer the demand of the population. Here we are talking about how technology, it's a tech for good approach, you know. So later today in this emission, we'll talk about what we did with zero-emission mobility, and it's exactly a perfect usage of how we are bringing forces, an ecosystem to innovate together.
And probably, I think it would be interesting to share with the audience today. So looking, for young generations, looking at the private sector. So what are you seeing? What are the trends you're seeing in terms of new expectations and behaviors coming from this generation?
Yeah, so it's super interesting for us because at Microsoft, of course, we're spending our time to listening and to trying to co-invent the future, of course. And in this study, it's clear that the young generation that are the digital native, of course, but using digital is one thing, but it's super in their DNA also to adopt a responsible behavior in terms of mobility. So we talk already about that, but of course they feel powerless to create change themselves. So we need public and private actor. So at Microsoft, of course, we're investing a lot to understand this challenge and detect the needs. Technology is a must, but it's not only the solution, of course, and it needs to benefit to the future of mobility. So being part of this survey was super interesting for us. And the trend highlighted are a lot around moving differently. So, of course, sustainability, when you book a car now, of course, you can select, is it an electric car or not? So can I share my ride or not? So it's an economical question, of course. But of course, if at the same time, and we talk a lot about that already, I can have the pleasure of the feeling that I'm doing the things the right way. So again, I don't want, so young generation don't want to stop traveling, of course, but if they can give a meaning at the same time, that's super interesting. So this is why all the platforms, the digital platforms that we will have to put in place, of course, can encourage sustainable mobility, share mobility, all these kind of things.
Thank you for sharing, Arnaud. We spoke about the difference between Gen Z and their, the previous generation with Michel and Guillaume here. Now, if we have to split, the Gen Z in the American population and the European, do you see any difference in their expectations, when it comes to the private sector?
Yes. As for the private sector in Europe and in America, the expectations are quite the same. Of course, they want private company because there is a lot of very known, mainly digital private companies that really transform our life. We are one of them, of course. And for the private sector, it's, the brands are everywhere in the world. In Europe, the main difference is that young people, and it's in our culture, think that public authorities are the ones that we trusted more in a way that can guarantee the general interest. Transportation, mobility, of course, is a big topic for public interest. So this is a difference mainly I see between Europe and America.
Well, when we talk about this new generation requirements, looking at their employees in terms of sustainable mobility. So what do you see there?
Well, two things here. Of course, sustainable mobility, the way I will travel with a responsible way. So the young people are very attentive now of what kind of benefits or what are the value of the company they want to work for. And of course, it's super nice to have great facilities, to have a lot of things that help us to work in a super great environment. Not so much at the moment, for example, but there are also a lot of questions, and it's very more and more in the job interview. Young generation wants to have a purpose in their job, in their life, of course, and in their job, and they want to buy the statement of the company. And at Microsoft, we are super active about sustainability. So we announced 2 years ago that we are carbon neutral since 2030. We will be carbon negative by 2030. And by 2050, we will remove the old carbon that we put in the atmosphere. So, and this is the question that we have, and we feel that during the job interview, it's important to share this value with the young people that want to join us.
So that's great to hear. I'm sure that you are not very surprised to hear what Arno just shared to both of you. So thank you, Arno. That was very insightful and interesting to see how these young generation are looking at their employers and big corporates, private sector. So now let's get back to the study, maybe Michel. So what do you see? What is the role of young people in the moving on ecosystem today?
It's a very important question you have here. Let's come back to the beginning of Movin'On. First, at Movin'On, we started to convene the companies, private sectors, as we discussed with Arno just before. Then it was the public sectors, the cities, the international organizations like the World Bank, for example, the NGOs. Now it's time to have on board with us the young generation. And they are ready. They told us in the study that they want to join, that they want to act. And it's what we are doing at Movin'On. We are acting every day to define, to design the mobility of tomorrow. And as they are change makers, we must, I would say, have the young generation on board with us and collaborate. And we'll start very soon to work with them. We will have the next coming Movin'On Summit in June. It is part of the programmation today.
Absolutely, we'll talk about it later.
Present it. And they will be part of the game starting in June with us.
Well, that's great to hear. So I see with the survey that Movin'On has conducted, we can see that there's this capacity to create very high-level content here, and we see it with the study that has been presented. So what about other content, more, accessible content that you're probably working on? Can you tell us more?
Yeah, Guillaume was talking about the COVID crisis. It changed a lot of things for Movin'On also. So we decided to conduct that survey at that moment. And also we decided to create new kind of content. And we launched last year some podcast called Mobility Stories. And the idea is really to ask different views on mobility. So it's not expert views. It's more people who are thinking, who are doing different things, and we give us their vision of mobility. Mobility of today, mobility of tomorrow, but also mobility of yesterday. We had some historians, we have some urbanists, doctors, researchers, and so on. And these podcasts are very interesting view, very different view on mobility. And we can see that mobility is everywhere, everywhere in our life, not only in transportation, it's really everywhere. We just podcasted last week 2 new podcasts with L'Express, the French magazine, based on the study and on the vision of the mobility seen by the young generation. So we have no time today to listen to any of these podcasts, so I'm very frustrated on that. But they are online on our website, and also they are available on the different podcast platforms. So
Great.
really, they are interesting, and you should listen to
I
them.
will, Michelle. Of course I will, and I hope you will too. So feel free to go on the platforms and check out all the podcasts and the content that you have there on the different surveys. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Guillaume. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Asha.
And thank you, Arno, also. Arno, stay with us. I'll connect with you later on in the show. Ladies and gentlemen, time now for a short break, a relaxation break. I invite you for a quick yoga session. So if you're at home, at the office, or wherever you are, take a couple of minutes and enjoy this relaxation session with Els, who is here with us on the set, and I'm joining her straight away. Well, as I just mentioned, time for some relaxation break. Hello, Els. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
So what are we going to do today?
Well, we have a short break based mainly on breathing. So we keep our social distance. We are just 2 meters away, so this is fine. I'm just gonna get rid of my mask. Will be easier. So I invite you to put your 2 feet hip distance apart and feel your heels grounded on the floor. And just breathe normally and try to get your spine as long as you can. Imagine a string pulling up through the sky. Okay, and exhale and relax your neck and shoulders. Okay, and again, inhale, have your spine long and straight. And exhale, breathe out and relax shoulders, neck and jaws. And again, inhale, have your spine long and straight. And exhale, jaws, neck, shoulders, all relaxed. And now get your 2 hands on your belly, hands and fingers relaxed. Have a deep breath in and feel your stomach inflate. And exhale through the mouth and feel your stomach, deflate. And again, inhale, breath in. Feel your stomach inflate. And exhale slowly and feel your stomach shrinking. Very good. Now take your 2 hands on your ribs. Just feel your hands and fingers on your ribs, shoulders relaxed. And again, have a deep inhale and feel your ribs open. And exhale slowly through the mouth and feel your ribs shrinking. Let's do this again. Inhale slowly through the nose and exhale. Feel your ribs shrinking together. And another time, again. Deeply breathe in. Slowly breathe out through the mouth. Very good. Now you're going to cross your hands one over the other and put your hands over your chest. Once again, breath in slowly through. Very good. And exhale through your mouth and see your chest going down. Let's do this again. Inhale, feel your chest going up. And exhale slowly. Feel your chest going down. Let's do this another time. Connect to your breath. Very good. And exhale slowly. Very good. Then have one hand on your belly and the other hand on your chest. And we're going to do this all the way through, beginning from the bottom up to your chest. So breath in slowly and feel your stomach, then your ribs open, then your chest going up. And exhale, very good, Asha. Your chest going down, your ribs shrinking, then your belly deflate. and again. Yes, very good. And exhale slowly through the mouth. Very good. Very good. Let's do it the other way around. Your chest, we're going to first go up and you're going down through the stomach. So, breathing in, open your chest, open your ribs, inflate your stomach, and exhale. Deflate your stomach, shrink your ribs, go down with your chest. Another round. Yeah, connect with your breath. Let's feel everything. Feel the flow. Very good. Now you can have your hands against your hips. Push with your heel in the ground. Try to be as tall as you can. And breathing in, open your arms and go straight to the sky. Shoulders keep relaxed. Your fingers through the sky. Palms facing out and slowly push the air on both sides. Once again. Let's do this 3 times. Again. Inhale, breathing in. Have your arms and fingers straight to the sky. Reverse your palms facing out and push the air on both sides while exhaling. Very good. One last time. Again, take your time. Follow your breath. Very good. And exhale. All the way down. Very good. And you can stay just a little bit just to feel now how relaxed you are, just using your breath.
Absolutely right. I feel very relaxed now. I hope you feel relaxed too. Thank you, Els. It was great having you, and we'll catch up with you later in the show.
With pleasure. Thank you.
Well, time to move on. Discover the findings of our zero-emission mobility workshops right after this video. I'll see you on the set with my guests.
5 years after signing the Paris Agreement, we've reached a key moment, a turning point. Why? Although the transport sector still represents 24% of international CO2 emissions, electric vehicle sales have quite literally exploded in Europe in 2020, reaching more than 500,000 units. And beyond the figures, we are witnessing a true alignment of the planets. More than ever before, there's a political will. Over the last year, French and European institutions have unveiled ambitious stimulus packages. What do these recovery packages hope to achieve? To create a central role for clean mobility solutions to become carbon neutral by 2050, in line with European Green Deal objectives. By 2030, we want to increase the number of zero-emission vehicles tenfold, multiply by 40 our capacity to produce green hydrogen. And today, citizens are already adopting new behaviors. They are calling on governments to act for the climate and rethink their policies. Electric mobility technologies have unleashed vast innovation potential. In combination with digital, battery, and hydrogen technologies are reaching new levels of maturity and opening up exciting possibilities. Why is it more important than ever to accelerate this transformation? To build a fully fledged zero-emission sector at a European level. This will mean facing unprecedented ecosystemic challenges, including building interoperable infrastructures for 3 million charging stations by 2030, and meeting the additional electricity requirements. Designing zero-emission vehicles that regenerate rather than generate waste. Developing new services enabling individuals and companies to measure and monitor their carbon footprint. It is more important than ever to accelerate this transformation. Zero-emission mobility must become a reality. It's no longer a question of when and how, but how fast. Welcome to the road to zero-emission mobility.
And I'm joined on the set with Eric and Frank. Eric from Movin'On and Frank from Capgemini. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello,
Thank you for joining
Asha.
me. I'll get back to you in a couple of minutes, but let's welcome Bart Bebach, who is from Fuel Cells and Hydrogen Joint Undertaking. Hi, Bart. Thank you for joining us. How are you today?
I'm very good. I'm happy to be here and looking forward for the discussions.
Absolutely. So Bart, we're going to speak about the challenges of building this zero-emission European value chain we spoke about earlier on. So as a member of the editorial committee of the Zero-Emission Mobility Initiative, what are, according to you, the main roadblocks, for the European H2 value chain?
Well, one of the first roadblocks is, of course, the cost of hydrogen. We really need to get down that cost. And as many of you might know, the 80% of the cost of hydrogen comes from the cost of renewables. So we need more and cheaper renewables. And we have already quite good views on that. In Portugal, we see that we have auctions now for 30 euro per megawatt hour. That means that we can basically produce the hydrogen almost like 1.5 euro per kilogram, and this is green hydrogen. But we need to really have more and cheaper renewables. Also, we need to think to import probably all about those renewables, and that will require, of course, a regulatory framework, which is still necessary to be made. A second point I see as a roadblock is the certification. We are working very hard on that on the European Union. We have certified, but we need to make sure that the hydrogen that is used to refuel your cars, your buses, your trucks, all the transport, but not only transport, also which is used in industry, it is green, renewable, or even low carbon, because here I want to make also a pledge that we will need low carbon hydrogen, at least in the transition phase, to meet all the demand of the hydrogen that we will be necessary. And finally, the third roadblock is the infrastructure. We really need to have heavy investments in the infrastructure. And that not only about hydrogen refueling stations or electric vehicle charging points, but also on, for example, for hydrogen on the pipelines. We need to build pipeline from the northern part or southern part of Europe to the central part. This is really essential, and that has to go fast.
Right. So Bart, probably which way can innovation in ecosystems such as the Zero-Emission Initiative at Movin'On be an appropriate answer to remove these roadblocks?
Well, first of all, Movin'On and this working group, we bring people together. And I believe that helping investors and companies to find early solutions to really kickstart the market, this is one of a very important role. And for example, we need to show early business cases through innovative concepts in ecosystems. And we have a good example, which is the hydrogen valleys. And in France, you have the zero-emission valley. These are kind of ecosystems that works around a sectoral integration. So it's not only about mobility, but they try to invite many, many different sectors. And this is something that I believe you can help. And secondly, I believe in the awareness building among the stakeholders. Still, a lot of people do not know really what is now the hydrogen sector and understand the whole ecosystem very well. So to bring knowledge to the various stakeholders, I think is a very important mission as well. And thirdly is bringing people together from the different sectors to form partnerships, because let me be very clear on that. The only way how we will be able to realize this big transition is through partnerships. And we see some very nice examples already. Now you see that OEMs, car OEMs, are working together with big energy companies, and they form alliances to really kickstart the market. And this we need to see more. It's not enough today. And I believe there the organization like Movin'On could be a great help into that.
Thank you for sharing, Bart. Thank you very much. And we also have Claude Renard with us from the Ministry of Ecological Transition. Hello, Claude. Thank you for joining me. How are you?
Yeah, thank you. Fine, thank you.
Right. So, Claude, how do you consider this moment we are currently living in? Would you call it a turning point for zero-emission mobility?
Yes, absolutely, Asha. Faced with climate changes and in line with the Paris Agreement, the European Union and the member states have set themselves ambitious programmatic objectives for reducing CO2 emissions. For example, the French government is targeting a reduction of 28% of emissions by 2030 compared to 2015, and a decarbonization of transport by 2050. The implementation by the public authorities of recovery plans is an opportunity to integrate the ecological transition in the economic recovery, particularly and naturally in the transport sector. The public authorities obviously have a role of impetus, and the economic actors must seize the objective to meet the expectations of the citizens. In France, the signing of a real forward-looking automotive sector contract gives concrete form to our ambition.
Well, Claude, could you share with us more about, the obstacles that the development of zero-emission mobility, what are the obstacles that they are facing?
Yes. Road transport of goods and passengers, as well as personal transport, must radically change. The development of electric vehicles is becoming a necessity, confirmed by the blowing up on scales in 2020. It's a pivotal year for zero-emission mobility. But this development still faces three main obstacles. First, the cost of electric vehicles. On this point, the lower battery production cost, the investments of manufacturers, the massification of sales, and above all the various purchasing aids, bonus-malus, conversion bonus, have made it possible to take a first step in making the electric vehicle accessible to all. Second, autonomy. With an electric vehicle, the driver wishes to find as much as possible the same use that he had with a thermal vehicle. Here too, progress has been made on the part of manufacturers, but the electric vehicle offers is still too limited to city cars. And last but not least, recharging. It's essential to have a deployment of recharging facilities adapted in terms of territorial coverage and level of power. On these three subjects, efforts must be maintained and reinforced. This is how we will face the challenges before us.
Thank you for sharing, Claude Renard. Very ambitious plan indeed. So I would like to welcome again my guests. So Franck Dansat from Capgemini and Eric Grapp from Movin'On. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. So in reaction to the words we've just heard about Bart B-Buck and Claude Renard, what way it confirms, the zero-emission mobility initiative? Eric, question for you.
Yes, sure. Well, as you understood with the speeches of Bart and Claude, Asham, to deploy zero-emission mobility, to scale up zero-emission solutions, real concrete solutions, we need first to put around the table the right experts and the right decision makers, like Bart and Claude. And you will see a lot of them, and the heroes of the day are coming now. Then we have to identify roadblocks, and they said it also. And to tackle these roadblocks, we have built communities of interest or working groups with a specific method and specific process. And that's the work we have done together with Capgemini, and Franck will give you more details about that in a few minutes. So the method or the process, let's say, is also specific. Just to give you an idea, without giving you too much details, first you have to have a shared vision. You have to build together a shared vision. Because when you do so, you understand the market evolutions. You can detect opportunities together. And this will create trust between the stakeholders. The second part, or the second stage of the process, is clearly to identify the assets, the resources, each of these stakeholders can have, beginning with intellectual resources, by the way, so that we can then estimate who is bringing what and begin to think about the shared value. Because one day or another, we'll have to talk about the shared value if we do something concretely together to impact the market. We have then to prototype as far as possible, to experiment as far as possible, and that's one reason why we also ask Capgemini to be with us and to help, to be a kind of enabler. And then, if everything is fine, then we are preparing a kind of future cooperation, industrial alliances, or even consortium. And our job at the end of the day is to impact real life. So consortium is clearly one of the deliverables of our process.
So those are very, I was saying, great ambitions, lots of convictions. So, but how do you apply concretely these convictions to the zero-emission mobility initiative that you're working on?
Yeah, if you're talking about conviction, from the start, Frank and I are convinced that we have to be as much as possible action-oriented. So all these working groups you have on the screen, all these communities of interest, these 9 communities of interest, are really action-oriented. The second conviction is clearly that we have to be open to the diversity of stakeholders. Those partners of Movin'On, and we have more than 300 partners already within Movin'On, being able to bring some bricks, technological bricks, services bricks, but also those stakeholders outside Movin'On. We are completely in an open innovation process. And the third conviction which is particularly specific to this zero-emission mobility, is to try to overcome, the traditional opposition between battery and hydrogen. They are complementary, so they are not in competition. So these are the more or less the 3 convictions we had from the start with Frank, by the way.
And I now turn to you, Frank. So I understand that you share these convictions and that you apply them during the zero-emission mobility workshops. Probably share with us your contribution from Capgemini to these workshops and how concretely they took place.
Yeah, sure. In fact, there is a level of complexity in the initiatives because you have 9 working groups or community of interest. You have almost 45 companies or institutions and 150 contributors. So complexity in terms of topics, complexity in terms of number of participants, complexity in terms of objectives to achieve through the work groups, and another one which is about the context of the COVID with a fully digitalized approach. So Capgemini was here to power the initiatives. So we organize, we prepared, we facilitate all the work groups during December to January, February, and everything fully digitalized with our team.
That's great to hear. So I'm curious to know, what are the key learnings, Eric, that the experts are going to share with us here very briefly on the set? They're coming up next, but
yes, exactly.
Quick insight.
I think the heroes of the day will tell you what are the key results, and the leaders of the communities of interest will take the lead now. But yes, I can share some best practices we had identified during this process, and we will continue, by the way, to push them. The first one is to have systematically a customer-centric approach. So we put the customer in the middle of our talk and our exercise. So always we are trying to better understand the future demand. That's fundamental. We all say that, but we don't do it systematically. So here, with a zero-emission mobility, we do it systematically. The second best practice is to what we call to optimize the use of data. And you will see that a lot of our speakers will talk about that. And we began to talk about it with Microsoft a few minutes ago. The use of data will be key in the building of the future solutions for zero-emission mobility. And we have to develop new and more disruptive business models, because it is really the best way to guarantee the commitment and the engagement of players on a long-term perspective, but also to begin to think about the sharing of the value I was talking about a few minutes ago, which is at the center of our approach. But I suggest that we listen to the real heroes of the day.
Yes, and that will be in a couple of minutes. I would like to thank Bart and Claude for their contributions here today. Eric and Frank, it was great to have you on the set for sharing these insights. Thank you for the introduction and setting the context. So we understood the convictions and principles of the zero-emission mobility approach and its uniqueness. Now let's deep dive into the major insights of these workshops by welcoming in 3 different sessions. You will see the leaders who have led these workshops and who will share with us the initiatives that have emerged from their work. Well, it's obvious. We said it before. Scaling up is not just a matter of technological performance or the capacity of infrastructures, but that it requires the full and complete adoption of end users. In short, how to rethink the user experience, how to imagine new value propositions that re-enchant mobility. If the issues like recharging, autonomy, and costs are obviously key, we must keep in mind that the zero-emission mobility forces us to change the paradigm. And it's not just about changing the powertrain of vehicles, as some may think, but to design and imagine new services allowing to continuously optimize the usage value and offer users a seamless experience while developing infrastructures that promote multimodality that we spoke about earlier on and gradually encourage the abandonment of thermal vehicles. So why has customer centricity become so crucial? I'm joined by the leaders of the various workshops to talk about their findings. Welcome on board. It's great to have you here. So I will start with Cécile first. Cécile, how are you? Great to have you.
Thank you very much.
And on my right, I have Julien and David. Hello, thank you for joining me. So Cécile, I'll start with you. So you are the Secretary General of AVER, how do we say? AVER in France. Could you first probably give us an overview of where we stand in terms of transition to zero-emission mobility?
So thank you very much, Asha. So where do we stand? When we have a look at the historic background, what we see is that AVER, we support electric mobility since 1978. And at this time, the question was, is it possible? How and when? Now we have 7 million electric vehicles on the road, more than 350 million two-wheelers, 500,000 buses, and also heavy trucks on the rise. This is also to be seen with the double-digit growth rate that we see every year in the world. So this is a very, very strong dynamic that we see now. And what is also interesting is that finally, when you have a look at what is going to be the market in 2040, for example, and that you also make the link with the Paris Agreement, what we see is that finally, those technologies, battery, plug-in hybrids, and fuel cells are going to be absolutely dominant technologies. So now the question is, how fast?
Absolutely.
Exactly. And today there is absolutely no doubt that the electric mobility is going to make the revolution regarding the vehicles and also on the energy part. So this how fast questions now strongly depends on the user experience.
Right, and we're going to talk about that straight away. So what about user experience, customers? So what can you tell us?
So it's just that the user experience is at the cornerstone of everything that we are doing for the last 20 years on electric mobility. What we see today is that we have a very strong satisfaction with the vehicles. We have a 96% satisfaction rate, which is absolutely huge. So this has to be underlined because this is very important for what is coming next. But we have to improve the refueling, recharging experience in the coming years. And it works for all the type of technology for charging electric or for hydrogen too. And also, we also have to keep in mind that finally the electric vehicle has to be considered in a much more broader environment. What we see today is that finally, when we are talking of electric mobility, we are also talking about energy storage, demand side management, connected and autonomous vehicles, and also car sharing, etc. So all this is going to help different types of user experience that need to be improved. And in addition, we're talking about car sharing. This is also the link with mobility as a service. This is something that is developed a lot by the different territories in France, for example. A lot of different territories are looking at each other to see how they are going to deploy that. And this brings the idea that the consumer, that the user is going to consume, in fact, mobility as a service. So in conclusion, I would say that finally the key success factors for the user experience depends on the vehicle's diversity for different use case. That's almost down. The fuse energy infrastructures, the data infrastructure, and the services infrastructures.
Wow. Thank you for sharing, Cécile. I would like to connect once again with Arnaud Potignac from Microsoft, who I hope is still with us. Welcome back, Arnaud.
Thank you. So I heard from Eric that we're supposed to be the hero today. I'm not sure.
No, I think it's a brilliant way to put it. Arnaud, I know that you've been leading one of the working groups dedicated to the residual value of the vehicle. So we already spoke a little bit about data earlier on. So why is data key to enhance customer centricity of zero-emission vehicles?
So this is what we call a digital transformation. So basically now it is possible to record everything as far as you have the right sensor or the right technology. So you can know everything in real time. And so this is the way you can do great things, because if you know in real time, you can really act in real time. So of course, and as we said earlier, so sharing data from multiple sources, not only from the vehicle, but from the infrastructure, is key to provide this famous seamless experience. And honestly, with all the two main crises we are living at the moment, of course, the COVID crisis, but also the CO2 emissions that we need to dramatically reduce. This is really the right time for that, and people, especially the new generation, as we spoke already, are ready for that, and we can really create a better experience. So we don't want to worry about it was better before, because with this technology, we can really use all the data the right way, of course, and the famous artificial intelligence the right way, of course, to deliver a greater user experience. So as we said many times, so electric vehicles are very different by nature. So of course, autonomy is one of the most obvious, and time to charge is the most obvious difference. So this is why it's super important to monitor in real life, to be able to provide in advance the right information. So sharing information between the car, the infrastructure, and when I mean infrastructure is, for example, where you will be able to charge. If there is already a line, a queue, you can maybe book in advance, so you know that you will still have the time to charge. It will take 20 minutes, for example, and then you will reach your destination if you have an appointment at the right time. So again, we are ready to provide a better experience, because it's all about mobility again, and we are not saying at all that people will stop traveling, because this is in the nature of the human interaction to see each other, to travel. Unfortunately, I'm not with you today. So this is why it's super important to give the best advice to maximize the range and maximize the usage. So, but doing that, and this is what we did with our work group, we can record pretty much everything, but what kind of information are the most important to do the right thing, because it's not necessary to do a lot of analyze on millions of data if you can't provide the right information. So this is what we did with our partner. What are the key topics first we need to focus on?
Right, and obviously there's also the offer of, you know, the development of the different offers of the vehicle during the life cycle. So today we are looking at a very different paradigm from what we used to see before, Arnaud.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and we had extensive discussion about residual value. So I don't want to be long about that, but as far as you have the information in real time, so you collect the information, you know exactly what to do. And you know, maybe you don't know that today in France, more than 50% of the vehicles are part of a fleet. So can you imagine the importance it is for a fleet manager to have in real time the information about what is happening during a day in this fleet? So this will enable him to take the right decision. Oh, I know that, for example, a lot of battery, because it is super cold, are performing less. So maybe I will send a message to the user, please think to recharge tonight, even if you have even battery in your charging power in your battery. But because of the temperature, this would help you to maintain your car at the right state. So super important for what we call the maintenance at the right moment. So the second one is, and it's also super important, how we can involve the driver, the guy that, the first one was more about the B2B scenario. So I can help, for example, a car manufacturer or fleet manager to better manage and keep always at the right state the vehicle. But me as a user, how can I have the right information so I can adopt the right behavior? Maybe the car will be able to tell me, you know, maybe tonight you don't have necessary to recharge because in your calendar, because again, I have the data, you don't have to take your car tomorrow. And because, for example, EDF told the platform that tomorrow, again, it's super cold. So please, if you can't avoid recharge station, it will help the grid. Again, how can I push this information to the user to help him to have the right behavior for him, maybe to save money, but also in the life of his car. So you will keep your car at a better state longer because I gave you this right information.
That's brilliant. Thank you for sharing, Arnaud. Let me now move to another working group, right? So, and this time more customer-centric zero-emission vehicles which require customer-centric charging stations. And this is actually what was at the heart of your working group, if I understood correctly, Julien?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, the challenge we've been working on was about designing a viable and smart network of charging stations.
Right. So what does it concretely mean? How would you define the higher quality experience that we wish to provide in the near future?
Of course, what is at stake at the moment is the acceleration of the deployment of infrastructures. We need to cover all the territory with enough station at the right power, with the right localization, to benefit in the end to actual but also future EV users. Quantity is one thing, quality another, and we need also to provide those users with high quality standards regarding their charging experience.
Absolutely, not to be stressed about, okay, do I have enough battery to go somewhere, and be more serene about it. So what ecosystemic key actions to reach this higher quality experience?
So concretely, users need to have easy access to viable, reliable data, just to organize and secure the charging journey. They need also, when they arrived in the station, to get reliable and really user-friendly charging services experience. From a consumer's point of view, from a user point of view, you just need to plug your vehicle and you expect this vehicle to start charging. You are not expect to worrying about whether it would work or not, how long it will stay, it would last. How would you have to pay? How much would it finally cost? You need to enter this and provide a very simple user experience.
So do you have any initiative that you've identified during these working groups that you would like to share with us on this aspect?
terminal type, charging time, pricing, availability. There are actually a lot of unknown factors for an average EV users that he has to deal with. From an ecosystem point of view, I think we have the responsibility to maybe reinforce a cooperation to fluidify the sharing of the information we have between all the actors that are involved in the charging process. One proposal would be to launch some kind of common platform that would enable to gather, to collect all the data. And this platform should be open to enable, easy access from all the players to this framework.
Thank you for sharing, Julien. Another working group here, David Lerouge from Colas, right? Hello, David.
Hello.
So the working group, we've been talking about is how to promote interoperable infrastructure. So we've been talking about customer experience with electric vehicles, with Arnaud, customer experience with charging stations, with Julien. So now new customer experience with infrastructures and more specifically with mobility hubs. Which are the topic of your working groups?
Yes, we focused on the interoperability of mobility hubs. We think that mobility hubs are clearly a great opportunity to switch to zero-emission mobility because they generate large amount of flows and they are transitional spaces between different types of mobility. This is why this is an opportunity to switch, for example, from a thermal vehicle to a zero-emission solution. And even more than the current stations, the hubs of the future will be a point of convergence between multiple services and will involve a wide variety of actors like mobility, for example, but commerce and energy and also infrastructure.
Right, so David, there are many challenges on the way. I'm guessing, what is the main challenge that you would say all these multiple players with a mobility hub have to face?
Well, we think that the main challenge is probably to align all the stakeholders on the same value proposition, and which is, in addition to obvious criteria of functionality, must integrate the dimension of scalability and recyclability of materials.
And which initiative do you think that is worth exploring now?
Well, I think prospective approaches are key if, as I just said, we want to align all the stakeholders around a common and converging vision. But we also need to take in consideration the mobility hubs from customer journeys point of view. And we also need to consider the need for infrastructure providers to understand how the people act and in order to imagine the new infrastructure.
So you have some plan on a long-term and short-term?
I think we need to start with a pragmatic and customer-centric approach by studying the use cases and the users' needs in terms of mobility, and move forward to designing and improving the solutions according to this data.
Okay, thank you for sharing. It was great to have all of you here. Thank you, Arnaud. And it's now time to move to our second insight, optimize data usage. I'll see you right after this. The transition towards a decarbonized mobility must obviously benefit from the digitization of the transportation sector, which offers untapped lookouts and considerably enlarges the playground of zero-emission mobility. The huge evolution calls for a tight cooperation between many players from the various sectors. And by some kind of magic, I'm welcoming some new guests here. So Jean-Luc Mossard, so you are a member of of the editorial committee of the Movin'On Zero Emission Initiative. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
And Frédéric, you're from Faurecia. Thank you for joining me too. So I'll get back to you in a couple of seconds. Let me just first ask this question to Jean-Luc. So can you probably tell us about the main burning topics regarding data sharing, connected vehicles, and all services that are associated? We spoke about it earlier on a little bit with the other guests.
We already spoke about the subject, but believe it or not, we are going to see more changes in the automotive industry ecosystem over the next decades than we have seen in the past 30 years. And that was very important in the automotive industry. We have to bring and to promote a sustainable mobility based essentially on vehicles and services. So data are very important. The use of data is essential. And because yesterday, with thermal vehicles, we can see that the ecosystem was quite simple. You had the production of the energy, oil, for instance, refining, then distributions, then you had the sales of vehicles and the use. So it was quite sequential. And now we are moving to a complex value chain and complex environment, and starting for the production of the energy of carbon-free electricity. That means mainly from renewable energy, and the transport of the energy, the distribution also, but to reach the operators of charging and to reach also energy aggregators and to permit to access to services. And it is very important for us because we see that we need an infrastructure very sufficient in terms of scale, but also connected. And for example, we can have some subject like the payment, easy payment of the vehicle, or easy access to the stations, to know if the stations are free or not, and so on. So need a complete ecosystem connected with a lot of data exchanges.
This is amazing. There's lots in this field. There are lots going on. So what are the other major evolutions you have in mind regarding data?
As we have data, what we want is also to think on to be a service providers. Service provider facilitated by the fact that our vehicles are connected now. And this service will be based on data sharing and with remote access to the data, but according to what we call the extended vehicles. That means that we have to control the access of the data and via a neutral web server. By sharing this data more freely, the level of value creation will increase. It's potentially very much important for all the actors of the ecosystem. As we will see in all the presentation of today, the availability of this large amount of data and the associated services you can bring concerns vehicles and their environment, make it possible to rethink mobility for the benefit of the users.
Rethink mobility for the benefit of the users. Thank you for sharing. And I'll now move to Frédéric Charon from Faurecia, who is with me and who has worked on another working group, how to turn retrofitting into a competitive option on a large scale. So you led this working group on leveraging retrofitting at an industrial scale. Frédéric, which role would you say data is supposed to play in the process of retrofitting a vehicle and making it cleaner?
Yeah, I'd like to start with a very simple data, because we are speaking about data. Have you got any idea what is the global vehicle fleet on the planet?
Oh my God, I'm sure it must be quite a lot.
Yeah, we are dealing about circa 1.3 billion cars. You had something like 200 millions commercial vehicles. That's what we are talking about. And the renewal rate is circa, all comprehensively, 100 million per year. And among the personal vehicles, we get something like 3 million electric cars. That means it's a long way to get there. So if we want to have zero-emission mobility, if you consider the time it will take to change everything, it's quite long. So the question we asked ourselves was to say, is there a shortcut towards that, because
we love that.
Yeah, we get the vehicle. Most of the vehicles are quite okay. They get only one issue. They get internal combustion engine in it. So the idea would be, do we have the possibility to take the vehicles as they are and to put an electric engine into it? That would be the way. And that was the first question. But what is absolutely fascinating, if you start with that and you begin to pull the thread, you say that immediately the normal duration of a car, Jean-Luc, we said more or less 200,000 kilometers or so, and mostly based on the engine, if we can say. If you change towards an electric engine, you find yourself with a car that is able to do much more. And globally, the zero-emission mobility is to be taken comprehensively, because the energy that is used by the car is only a part. The car is being built, so you consume energy also to build the car. If we get a car that, through an electric motor, is able to make more kilometers, you will also spare on the energy used to build the car.
So less energy, more sustainable.
Yep. And what is also fascinating is that here you begin to completely unroll the reasoning on that, to say, if we get a longer duration of the car, at this point you can also think about the components that you have into the car, because are they able to do such an extended mileage? Maybe not, maybe yes. So you have to rethink the way you are doing into the design of the car, but also to reuse the parts. So there is completely a brand new field of opportunities that we have. So to answer your point regarding data, there is one basic thing: what can be measured can be dealt with, obviously. So you need to recover data to know inside your car what is the situation of the various components. So we are talking about Internet of Things. The idea would say, can we plug inside the car sensors and data generating sensors that are able to give us the state, really the health of each component. And here again, you unroll another step, because you say, if I am able to monitor every component, I am able to know if it shall be replaced, shall be reused on another car, and you are again sparing energy because you have a much longer duration of all the components. So we start with something that is inclusive, because we allow more people to access to electric mobility, and we get also something that in terms of circular economy, in terms of preservation of the resources, not only energy, but also the raw material, we might have something. Is it achievable? That's what we are working for.
Oh, that sounds really exciting. And Frederic, I'm very curious to ask you another question. Now, I think correct me if I'm wrong, I think it goes beyond safety in the minds of the users. It's the sustainability, more responsible type of behavior. So it's really beyond safety.
No, safety in the car is absolutely the baseline. That means that's no discussion on that. Safety is, we are in the automotive industry, so that's
the first thing,
point
primary.
number one. So that is no negotiation about safety. But the point is how to hack the car. That means take a car as it is and safely be able to retrofit a system. But that goes beyond that, because the cars that would last longer would be able to receive components that would be updated. And so there is, again, a new way of dealing about potential businesses with partners that's absolutely immense. So we are not there yet, because it's very complex. We are completely re-scrambling an industry that is made to build consumable goods. And here immediately you are thinking about not a consumable good, but an asset that needs to be maintained. And so everything is involved. Financing, maintenance, a complete new value chain that could be unleashed with that.
Very interesting. Thank you for sharing, and very clear. So the data capture opens actually tremendous opportunities. And I would like to discuss with Alberto De Monte from Masternaut, who is with us, I hope. Alberto, right? And it's a company offering telematics services to fleet management. So Alberto, you have led the working group dedicated to the development of zero-emission mobility through services. Could you tell us what kind of new services for users or fleets can be developed thanks to data share collection?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's very nice to be here and participating in Moving On. So regarding your question, there are lots of things that can be done, but what the team came up with in terms of idea is that by sharing data, we can help the public, both consumers, private citizens, and fleets gain more confidence about the adoption of electric vehicles. So, for example, by sharing data about the actual performance of EVs, people can be more confident about the actual range, as well as by sharing data around the total cost of ownership of vehicles, of electric vehicles. New car buyers can make their decision also based on economic factors.
Well, how can access to this data actually help optimize vehicle use?
So basically, when you drive electric vehicles or you need to operate electric vehicles, it is very important that you can have access to additional information that you normally you wouldn't use as a driver of traditional vehicles. For example, charge points. You need to know where the nearest charge point is. You need to know if it's the right charge point for you, if it's available or not. So this seems to be basic information, but it's vital when you're driving an electric vehicle.
Well, could it lead to predictions or even personalized recommendations?
Yes, absolutely. I think what is important is that consumers and fleets can basically use the data to fulfill their specific needs. And there can be multiple needs when it comes to electric vehicles. I mentioned earlier the fact that you need to have information about the total cost of ownership of an EV compared to a conventional vehicle. I mentioned as you operate with an EV or you're driving an EV, you need to have information about the charging infrastructure and the availability of charge points. But also additional things like what is your remaining range? Can you hit the next delivery point with the available range? Or is your vehicle fully charged at the beginning of the day so that you can be confident that you're going to end the day and be back home?
Well, we now see the opportunities that this offers in terms of total cost of ownership. Is it also achievable in terms of total cost of mobility?
Yeah, so thank you, Asha. This is a very important question. Absolutely. We see more and more this trend of moving from total cost of ownership, which is linked to the conventional idea of either owning or using a vehicle, to the fact that people are moving to multiple modes of transport, and this is fostered by mobility policies of companies. So absolutely, I think by sharing more data, this is really the key to basically facilitate the shift from total cost of ownership to total cost of mobility.
Thank you, Alberto, for joining us on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you, Asha. Thank you for having me.
Great. So I believe that it also means something important for you as well. You go as Chief Marketing and Digital Officer at Arval. I'm sure you are with us today. Hi, Hugo. So just brief background. Arval is a branch of BNP Paribas acting as a European lead in corporate fleet management. So you led a working group, and your working group was actually focused on developing zero-emission mobility for employees through the fleet and corporate policies. So what solutions have you imagined to allow employees access a decarbonized mobility?
Yeah, as you know, the mobility of employees is a major source of emissions for companies who at the same time are building CSR policies in order to have a positive impact on society. So to help companies reduce their mobility footprint, we have identified two levers. First, to propose a comprehensive electric vehicle value proposition. And it's not only about the car, but also about the services that go with, and in particular, the charging infrastructure. And also make sure that the electricity you put into the car comes from sustainable energies. And the second, we know that alternative mobility, such as public transport, bike, kick scooters, and even walking, are by design decarbonized. So offering to corporate customers a mobility platform integrating various mobility services accessible on demand and digitally is a great opportunity for employees to have access to a wide range of zero-emission mobility means, and it is for the employers the ability to fully manage the mobility policies and budget.
Well, Hugo, could this platform actually facilitate the total cost of mobility calculation we mentioned earlier on?
Yes, of course. Have in mind that tomorrow employees will be equipped with mobility budget that they will be able to use via their app. So all the mobility expenses will be gathered into reporting tools that will help companies measure their total cost of mobility. But beyond money, we will also know the level of CO2 emission per journey. So as a consequence, the future mobility platform will be able to inform the company about its total carbon footprint linked to mobility. It will be a very powerful tool to help them steer their CSR strategy.
That sounds exciting. So do you consider other ways, to optimize, for example, sharing assets between employees?
Yeah, absolutely. The connection of the vehicles allow them to be shared and used on demand by employees. And it's not about only the car, it's also for the bikes, for the kick scooters, and other alternative modes. Thanks to technologies, large companies can really create mobility apps with any kind of shared vehicles that can be used for professional and personal trips. It helps reducing the carbon footprint of the company and at the same time improving the well-being of its employees.
That's great. Thank you, Hugo. So Jean-Luc, you've heard Hugo, Alberto, Frédéric here. So do you see more changes in the automotive industry ecosystem coming over the next decade than we've seen in the past 30 years, I'm sure? So these examples and initiatives are actually some illustrations.
Yes, there are some illustrations in the way of the zero carbon mobility. We have to work on electromobility on vehicles. That means battery electric vehicles or fuel cells electric vehicles. But we have also to work with the possibility given by the connectivity. And the possibility is the vehicle connected provide access to the data, and as we've seen with Frédéric, it can offer a real knowledge of the status of the vehicle, or the status of the components, and that means that it is useful for the fleet management, and also extended with new services for extended life strategy. So it's very important to see that we don't see the exhaustiveness of this type of services, but there is a lot of, we have a list of new services for the benefit of the customer, as I said, and there are numerous. We have already seen examples on predictive maintenance with software updates, multimodal navigation, and all those activities will provide a better world and without carbonization.
Well, thank you for sharing, Jean-Luc. Thank you, Frédéric. It was great to have you on set. And thank you to Alberto, Hugo, and thank you to all of you. It's time to move to our third insight, building new business models, right after this. The third key insight that has been identified today is the necessity to develop new business models if we want to accelerate the transition to a zero-emission mobility. This is something I'd like to discuss with the two gentlemen on the set who have joined me today. So I have Romain Talagrand from BNP Paribas CIB and Olivier Terral from Enedis. So that's great to have you here. I will start with Romain, maybe. So you've been leading the working group about how to mitigate risks and secure investments. So talking about zero-emission mobility more specifically, why is it so crucial to mitigate risks?
Okay, so I work in a bank, so risk is high on my mind. But joke aside, zero-emission mobility is an industry that requires a lot of investment. It needs to develop an infrastructure. For instance, for charging electric vehicles. There's also a lot of investment that need to go into the industrial chain and the technology bricks. And therefore, not only it does need to deploy and attract a lot of capital, it needs to do it in a cost-efficient way, so that zero-emission mobility is a cost-competitive offer. And in order to attract a lot of capital in a cost-efficient way, risk needs to be understood and mitigated.
Absolutely. Agreed. So is it more a problem of profitability of the business model than of funding? What would you say?
Yeah, I think if you have a robust and sound and well-understood business model, you will attract a lot of efficient capital, and capital will compete to invest into your project. So the starting point is to develop those business models that can attract capital. There are different layers of risk, but the common risk factor we see in many projects is the lack of visibility of a demand and usage. Obviously, it's a nascent activity, it's a nascent industry. In the case of EV charging, there's already some cars on the road. In the case of hydrogen, it's really nascent. There are just a few initiatives, and therefore there are lots of uncertainties around demand. So we think, the right business model will have to exhibit certain characteristics in order to attract capital. One is offering enough visibility to all stakeholders, financiers, equity investors, but also end users and suppliers. We think also projects need to be able to attract and stimulate demand and new sources of demand over time, so that they can plug into a green hydrogen supply, for instance. And finally, we think it's also, and the working group thinks that it's very important that we also integrate recycling, circular economy, eco-friendly impacts, and not just positive emissions, of course, but other impacts.
Well, that's great to hear. So which key success factors to mitigate risk and secure investments to zero-emission projects have you been able to identify so far?
Yeah, so we've had many areas of thoughts and discussions within the working group. Obviously, we spend a fair bit of time on demand and how can we ascertain demand and help develop demand, because that's the main topic, I think. So our first recommendation is that people develop business models where you can offer more visibility on demand. It means different answers depending on which industry segment. For mobility, and if I take the example of hydrogen mobility, there are areas where it will be easier to develop such business models. I'm thinking captive fleet with predictable journeys, so typically a fleet of public transportation buses. So it's a captive customer. You know how much hydrogen they need. They come back to the same charging point every night. So it's much easier to identify. But it could be other things. If it's battery manufacturing for electric vehicles, then it means probably offtakes with automobile manufacturers, as we've seen in certain transactions recently. So that's the first point, developing your demand and your case. Another very different topic we discussed is how do we create an ecosystem? Because we need to create an ecosystem where other players can plug into this. So it's important that even if you, as a customer, you don't represent a lot of demand, you can access those new forms of mobility and the supply of hydrogen, for instance. And therefore, we discuss tools, that allow information sharing, so that people know where they can find the supply, or people know where they can find their customers.
So mutualized assets. Yeah. So that's great to hear. Thank you, Romain. Thank you for sharing. So I'm now turning to Olivier here from Enedis. So Olivier, you've been working on another working group here about how to adapt the networks to the rise of zero-emission vehicles. So why is this question of fast charging hubs so crucial, and why is it important to develop new business models regarding those fast charging hubs?
Yeah, well, first, some few words about Enedis. We are the French major DSO, so our public service mission is to plan, develop, and operate the electric grid of 95% of the French territory. And so we aim to forecast and anticipate the power demand of all the charging infrastructures of the zero-emission mobility. And the good news is there is no problem of power supply in France, so it's okay.
That's already a good point.
Yeah, but there is a special task on fast charging because fast charging station almost requires the same amount of power as a small city of 6,000 inhabitants.
Wow,
so
that's a lot.
So it may be not as easy as to connect to the grid this facility, and it can generate some significant costs that can affect the profitability of the charge point operators.
Mm-hmm.
So and it can also generate a technical issue for the grid. So we have to cooperate
mm-hmm.
In order to mitigate the risk of the connection to the grid
right.
of these facilities, and that's why we have led this workshop on the fast charging
right.
topic.
So, like Romain just mentioned, the ecosystem, utilizing assets. So this is also key. It's a true ecosystemic approach is required, right?
Sure. Our workshop has gathered many stakeholders from all the value chain. We had property managers, motorway companies, charge point operators, fleet managers, sorry, and also public institution to work on this special topic of fast charging. And we have worked on very concrete initiatives. First one is to improve the cooperation of all the ecosystem around assessing the capacity, the availability of the power supply
mm-hmm.
around the location of the fast charging stations. And for instance, we have imagined to develop EV ready zones
mm-hmm.
in order to connect this zone to the grid and to deliver the power supply. To facilitate the implementation of a charge point operator that would choose to set a fast charging station.
Mm.
And the second initiative we shared was to set an open data platform that could display all the information about the availability of the real estate
mm-hmm.
And the capacity for an investor to choose a location to implant, to install a fast charging station, a hub charging station around suburb areas, for instance, and also in order to have a good mapping of all these facilities around a city, for instance.
Right, so this platform is going to give more visibility, and obviously your mission is to make sure that we cover the power needs of the future.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, great. So for the conclusion of this session, I would like to welcome back Claude Renard, the French Ministry of Ecological Transition, who is back with me. So thank you for remaining with us, Claude. Before closing this session, I would like to ask you just to react on what has been said by Romain and Olivier. In other words, what makes you confident today, or not, when you listen to all these different initiatives to consolidate the zero-emission mobility market?
Yeah, thank you. I'm very confident. No problem. Yes. As in other sectors, we are seeing an acceleration in changes in mobility, but more than changes, it's a real transformation will take place. Clearly, I think it's impossible now to predict with precision what the mobility of tomorrow will be, especially the mix between fast and normal charging, which may be different between urban or rural areas, for instance. But it is certain that the electric mobility will play a major role, and that there will be strong demand. Where, how, and what kind of usage, I don't know, but the answers to these questions remain unclear today. All the prospective studies show the absence of short-term profitability. However, the strong growth in electric vehicle sales in 2020 in the European Union should continue with a very clear improvement in business models from 2013 or before.
All right. So Claude, how do you consider this market, which is growing, but which is at the same time very fragile, still looking for competitiveness?
Yes, exactly. And we see a paradox. While the economic models are currently fragile, there is a beginning of competitiveness for the installation of charging stations. This is explained by the fact that we are still in the very beginning of the adventure. The actors want to take positions. The sector still needs to consolidate and structure itself. We have already seen mergers and acquisitions, and it will continue. Charging infrastructures have a natural place in the business development of energy or oil companies, which invest for the long term, and that is why they are positioning themselves now. But I think electric mobility is a huge field of opportunities for everyone. And the public authorities must and will be here to support this transformation.
Thank you, Claude Renard. Thank you for joining us. Thank you very much for your insights. And thank you, Olivier. Thank you, Romain. It was great to have you to speak about your working groups. Now, time to move to our next session, Drive to Action, right after this. And for this new session, I'm joined once again by Eric and Franck. We'll have a chat in a few seconds, but first let me welcome Christophe Schramm from Symbio. Hi, Christophe.
Hi there.
It's great to have you. So we have many initiatives that are developed with our leaders. We've seen it. In this last part, we want to show you the transition to action. And by illustrating it, probably I will ask you to present give a concrete example of technological bricks that can illustrate your insight and what you're achieving at Symbio.
Okay, thank you very much. So, hi, I'm working at Symbio, which is the JV that Faurecia and Michelin created in the space of fuel cell systems. And I come from Solvay, which is a major materials and chemical company. And when at Solvay still, I had the pleasure to lead a working group of the Movin'On initiative to accelerate the European value chain for fuel cell systems, basically from key raw material suppliers to key component suppliers to system providers such as Symbio to OEMs and fleet managers. As you know, moving from a few hundred fuel cell electric vehicles that we have today to millions in the next 10 years is an incredible challenge. It will start with heavy duty, long distance applications, so that's trucks, commercial vehicles, also long distance buses, and then slowly move to light duty, shorter distance applications. And thanks to Europe's big ambition in hydrogen, there is also, key role for the European market. And we need to scale along the entire value chain while remaining competitive, because we all know, there are very ambitious cost roadmaps that the industry has and that our customers are expecting. So we worked a lot on a common market vision first and the needs for this entire value chain, and each and every player in that value chain to scale up in the fastest possible and most coherent and efficient way around a number of questions such as, what are the volumes that are needed by the different players to significantly reduce their production costs? What are the technology choices that are still outstanding on the way towards those high volumes? And what standards are needed to secure these volumes? We looked in particular at the needs for light commercial vehicles, for buses and trucks, which are the markets, as I said, that will take off first because they offer the best use cases for hydrogen. Previous speakers mentioned, the total cost of ownership, and that's clearly also a challenge that we're looking at from the hydrogen perspective. So there's one strong conclusion: the industry needs visibility, and it needs visibility, to make very significant investments that are required today to deliver on Europe's ambition tomorrow. And industry needs to be ready at the right time with the right product.
All right. So, Christophe, could you tell us what is the ambition for this initiative?
So this work group has the ambition to basically generate a mapping of all the key players in the value chain, bring those players together, create valuable connections for a number of initiatives. We heard about consortia before. You might be aware that there are these important projects of common European interest where there's also, matchmakings to be done with players from across the European continent. And then obviously we want to provide also an evaluation of the minimum volumes that are required to meet the competitiveness targets for policymakers to set the right framework. This requires each and every player to work with partners upstream and downstream of its own position in the value chain. And this is where we really see the value of the Movin'On ecosystem.
Thank you for sharing, Christophe. So we understand the call to action implies sharing convictions on required volumes and therefore critical thresholds. So to go further in this direction, we will be joined in a couple of seconds by Valérie Bouillon-Delporte from Hydrogen Europe. Valérie, so you are part of this working group and member of the editorial committee as president of the board of Hydrogen Europe. Which are, the possible solutions and projects to reach those required volumes Christophe was just mentioning a few seconds ago, and why is it important for all the different stakeholders?
Hello, Asha. I'm really pleased to be here at this Movin'On digital meeting, and hello everyone. The real test will be the implementation of concrete projects at large scale. For example, on the industrialization side, we have in Europe, IPCEI, important project of common European interest. They are needed to achieve that. There are critical industrial alliances which will help industrial champions to raise. One was built on batteries. One is being built on hydrogen currently. But we need also to focus on the deployment side. Some large-scale projects are being prepared, such as Rainbow Unicorn. The target is to deploy 100,000 vehicles and up to 600 stations with green hydrogen around major cities in Germany and in France as a start. This will allow achieving a total cost of ownership as close as possible to the one of diesel vehicles. Large-scale projects are the only way to build a strong value chain that will be competitive at a worldwide level. All of these projects have something in common. They mitigate the risk. They give visibility on volumes to vehicle manufacturers and to industrials. But they also provide first experimentation fields. There is a golden rule. You need to activate two major areas of cooperation: industrialization of technological bricks plus vehicles, and then deployment of usage at the same time. This could not happen if there hasn't been a strong mobilization from the different stakeholders.
Well, Valérie, what are the necessary partnerships or mergers, to reach the level of funding that is required? And these collaboration will hopefully shape the future of supply chain in Europe.
This one is also a very interesting question. In this respect, public-private partnerships are key. All of these early steps did benefit from subsidies either at European level with a fuel cell hydrogen joint undertaking, or in the States, subsidies from Department of Energy programs. In the next years, the massive funding through this public-private partnership will really make the difference. Associations also have a key role to play as they raise the voice of the different stakeholders, and that's what we do at Hydrogen Europe. At European level, we work in very close cooperation with the European Commission. I would like to highlight this is a no-brainer. We need to continue. We need even to accelerate this public-private partnership, and Movin'On in that respect is a huge springboard and a key asset. It is the first ecosystem on mobility at worldwide level, gathering public and private stakeholders. It is not only a think tank, it is also a think and do tank, spurring all the stakeholders to design and implement innovative, simple but also disruptive actions to make mobility smarter. Indeed, we are at the crossroads right now. The next 3 to 5 years will be the most decisive period for hydrogen ever. It's the make or break period. No doubt, we are living historical days, weeks and months. Let's make these next 3 years a period of time that we will remember as one of the most decisive to shape the future of our children and grandchildren. We have a chance to build the basis of climate neutrality, so let's do it together.
Thank you very much, Valerie, for these insights.
Bye-bye, Asha. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Well, I'm joined once more with Frank and Eric on the set. So I will start with the time for action. What can we say more, right? What does the zero-emission mobility become concretely now?
Yeah. So now we have 9 communities of interest with fully engaged leaders, as you have seen. And from Capgemini side, we are very impressed by the commitment, engagement of all the contributors and the willingness to continue to work together again and again. From the start to now, the committee has been enlarged. New actors came and joined the groups. And so this momentum has to be kept. And the second point is it has to be kept, but we have to move from slideware now to tangible actions. So it's about, joint ventures, it's about demonstrators, it's about experiment startups, and everything now has to move to action.
Right, so time for action. Eric, I'm asking you the same question now. So
I hope you expect the same answer.
I hope you will say something like that.
Asha, you understood that we are not at the end of the journey. We have a lot to do. But yes, as Frank just said, maintaining the momentum. I think we were quite successful with short meetings, with precise objectives and precise deliverables. But maintaining also the transversality, because there are a lot of best practices to share between the communities of interest. And as Valérie just said, push in the do-tank direction, push as far as possible towards prototyping, experimentation, and, if possible, alliances, consortium, startups. That's really, Frank and I, our common objective now, and we will help the 9 communities of interest to go in this direction.
Right, I think the message is loud and clear. But we're almost at the end of the show. It's not over yet, almost at the end of the sessions. Eric, I would like to ask you one final question. So just what would you like to say to close this inspiring journey?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all the stakeholders, all the leaders we listened today, to Frank, to Capgemini, to the editorial committee, and some members were with us today. Thank you to the 150 even more contributors, and thank you to you, Asha.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to be here, really. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Frank. Right, ladies and gentlemen, time now for a quick relaxation session. Yes, indeed. So if you're at home, at the office, or wherever you are, so feel free to take a couple of minutes to take a break with Els, and I'm joining her straight away. Hello, Els.
Hi again.
Hi again. So what are we doing now?
So we're going to have another short break. And I'm taking off my mask. We just keep distance apart.
Of course.
We're fine. So once again, keep stand up with your 2 feet hip distance apart. Feel well grounded on the floor. And just to get started, have a big inhale and raise your arms and fingers through the sky. Relax your shoulders. Reverse your hands, palm facing down and push down. Let's do this another time. Inhale, breathing in. Raise your hands and fingers through the sky and breathing out. Very good. Now, Asha, I invite you to have your hands on your shoulders. Keep your shoulders relaxed and draw some circles right with your elbows. And don't forget to inhale and exhale. Okay. Feel the flow of your breath. Yeah, very good. Yeah, draw some nice circles. Inhale and exhale slowly. And the other way round now. Very good. Take your time. Inhale and exhale slowly. Very good. 2 more. Very good. Right. Okay. Now keep your elbows on the same line, a bit up, and open your arms. Yeah, kind of angles, right angles. And inhale without moving towards. Put your elbows backwards, as if you wanted to have your elbows going and touch in your back. And exhale, have your elbows in front of your chest. Very good. Again, inhale, open. Yeah, as far as you can. And exhale, 2 elbows join in front of your chest. Very nice. Again, inhale. Go as far as you can. Stretch, open your heart. And exhale. Very good. Come back. 2 more. Open. Yes. And exhale in front of your chest. Very good. 1 more. Last one. Open up. And exhale slowly. Very good. Once again, open your arms. And now do some circles just with your wrist. This way. Keep your spine very long and straight. And the other way around. Very good. And feel what happens in your wrists, in your arms, in your shoulders. Okay. Now open your hands and just imagine you have some water on your hands and you want to get the water drops down on the floor. Shake. Okay. Shake again. Don't forget breathing. Very good. Very good. And relax. Okay. Now you gotta transfer your weight on one leg. And you're gonna move your knee up and try crossing your fingers to get your knee in front of you. Do what you can. Very good. And release. Change. Transfer the weight on the other leg. Cross your fingers and grab your knee in front of you and pull your knee towards your chest and relax. Very good. Balance. Change. Let's do this again. Okay. Transfer your weight. Grab your knee and try to pull your knee a bit further through your chest. Very good, Asha. Release. Once again. Transfer the weight on the other leg. Grab the other knee and try to pull this knee towards your chest. Very good. And release. Okay. Now I'm just turn a little bit. You're going to put your hands on your hips. You just put your leg parallel and you have one heel on the ground. Your leg is straight. Okay. Now inhale. And while exhaling, imagine you're going to sit down on a chair. Do what you can. Very good. And now exhale. And inhale. Move and get your arms and fingers straight and try to imagine the chair is a bit further down. Very good. Exhale. And come back. And change. Hands on your hips. Have the other feet heel on the floor. Inhale. And while exhaling, just imagine you sit down on a chair. Keep your spine straight. Very good. Inhale and raise your arms and hands. Push towards the sky and imagine the chair is a bit further down. Very good. And come back slowly. Take the time to come back, to get your feet once again hip distance apart. Very grounded on the floor. And to end it up, once again, inhale, breathing it. Reach the sky through your nails, having your shoulder relaxed. Open your hands and push the air on both sides. One last time with me. Inhale. Go through the sky with your nails. Feel your spines. Reverse your hands and push the air on both sides. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. The last exercise, my favorite.
Yeah.
Feel really relaxed. Thank you, Els. It was great having you on the show.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you feel relaxed too. Well, it's time to discover our Moving On Summit video, and I'll see you on the set right after this. Well, let's now discover more about the Moving On Summit, the World Summit on Sustainable Mobility. So born in 2017 in Montreal, every year the summit brings together all mobility players who want to move from ambition to collective action and believe in the virtues of co-innovation. Building on the success of the previous editions, in response to the acceleration of new digital practices, the World Summit on Sustainable Mobility will be an unprecedented experience not to be missed from June 1st to June 4th, and to go beyond borders, to increase our reach and be more inclusive. So from wherever you are in the world, at home, at the office, everyone will have the chance to live the Moving On Summit experience. So digital is really an opportunity, and it is pushing us to take up this challenge. So we said it's a new, unique digital experience, June 1st to June 4th. I said it live from Montreal, Paris, and Singapore. So on the program, you have 4 days of live programming, 3 cities, 150 organizations, 26 countries, more than 100 world-class speakers and experts, and you can take part in more than 120 thought-provoking sessions with major companies. So again, 4 days to get inspired, foster connections, invite all key mobility stakeholders, and engage in collective actions together. So you can also take opportunity of these 4 days to establish tangible actions to stimulate mobility with reduced environmental impact. So be part of the leading World Summit on Sustainable Mobility, a connected and collective experience. And joining means committing. So let me introduce a video where you will discover what I mean. And the best way to discover about the Moving On Summit is to connect with those who have been there, who have experienced the summit themselves. So I'm joined today by two people. One you've met, Guillaume, welcome back.
Thank you.
So you were there.
Yeah.
And not just you, and we also have Susanna with us. Susanna, are you there? Hi.
I'm here, Asha.
Right, that's great. So Susanna Zamatero is from the International Road Federation, and we are happy to have you. So you have both actually lived the I don't know how many times. How many times have you done it before?
Well, I went three times.
I think Susanna is the same for you, right?
Exactly, straight from the beginning.
Okay, so maybe a quick word. Tell us, what did we miss? I wasn't there, so tell me.
Well, I think the first thing that I really feel, and it's interesting to say feel, by the way, because usually, a professional conference, you do not really get some feelings and things like that. But honestly speaking, what I really feel is that you get out of that very inspired, very excited, and full of commitment to make things happen afterwards. So that's the first thing I would like to mention. It's a very unique type of, I would say, summit. It's not a conference. It's not a show. It's very much everything in that. It's inspiring. It's creating connections a lot. You can meet people that are passionate about the topics, and not only just, I would say on a very high level, but very much into a business-focused level as well, and passionate about the topic of sustainability. So it's been really, really a very long-lasting experience and feeling that you get on spot and that you continue to experience afterwards. So really unique type of summit, yes.
So I feel like I want to be there too. And Susanna, what can you tell us about your experience from the past editions?
Thank you, Asha. Well, I think I share a lot of what has been said.
Mota, il répond quand?
For me, it's really like embracing spring, literally going to the Moving On, and it's breathing fresh air, and it never disappoints. Really, every year, it's a place where I go to recharge my brain, feed my brain with new ideas, with the motivation and yes, the energy that it takes you to make that very first step that really drives change. I actually don't even consider it work, and I hope my board members and ExCom are not listening. It's a lot of fun, I have to say, and it's not just a container that is fun. I mean, those of us who have been lucky to be there in Montreal over the past editions and know about those brain dating that take place up in the air. It's the content that is a lot of fun. Moving on, as it just been said, it's not a conference. It's not just a conference. It's a lot more. And the bond, I would say, not just the networking, but the real bond that you create while connecting with all these people is something that I never experienced anywhere else. So what can I say? I'm just looking forward. I'm counting the days already.
Right. So thanks for the insight to both of you. And I think you're lucky because I think the format that you experienced, we might not, have the exact format coming up given the context. So could you probably give us a sneak peek of what will happen and how the conference will look like this year? Susanna, maybe.
Well, I can tell you that there's a lot of work already going on behind the scenes, preparing all these sessions like every year. And I don't think the Fidgetals or this mixed version between the studio and us sitting somewhere in the world will take away anything from the value or the real added value of Moving On. Moving On is really a community, and you feel it. As soon as you step in, you will feel it. You start belonging to a community and an ecosystem that Eric and some of the speakers just described before. As far as I'm concerned, we'll be working, I work very often on safety issues and bring safety issues and expertise to Moving On. This year, we're going to look at safety under a different angle. You know that COVID has created massive disruption in our lives, but in the way that we organize transport and mobility and the way we move as citizens, right? As the pandemic was unfolding, a lot of the things have been readjusted, including the space within the cities. And so this year, you've seen pop-up bike lanes, reallocating street space to allow people to walk safely. But again, now we are in that stage where some of us at least are going back to normal, and we need to make sure that returning back is done in a safe but also in an efficient way. The pandemic has brought lots of problems, but also nice things in a way. It has pushed us to think differently, and that's exactly what we want to do with Movin'On this year. One of the sessions, the working sessions I'm working with, we'll be looking at safety in a larger basket. So looking at safe and healthy urbanism. It's how do we redefine our spaces within the cities to make sure that while we ensure safety, at the same time we think about and take care of air pollution, the emissions and everything else. So how do we redefine urban space and create safer and also healthier cities and healthier lives for all of us?
That's great to hear, Susanna. This is exactly what you were saying earlier this morning, Guillaume, about breaks, but lots of opportunities, I think, brought by this context.
Yes, exactly. And you were asking about the question about what we will get in June, at the beginning of June, through this summit. And I would like to say, if you are looking for something that at the same time inspire you, because of the content that is not just very high level, that is very concrete, that is grounded, that really makes sense. If you want also to have the opportunity to contribute, to bring your ideas, and leave the working session with more ideas than the number of ideas you came in. So if you want to feel enriched by this working session, and if you want to see how those ideas come to experimentation, experimentation that you have opportunity to live and to experience, this is the place to be. And I'm also very excited to see that in the coming 2021 Movin'On Summit, there will be, again, a variety of formats that keep us, awake every single minute. But also, I will be also very interesting to see how the topic that we discussed at the beginning, which is how to bring more the young generation into this fantastic and very, ambitious adventure of developing more sustainable mobility. I'm very excited to see how we will bring those young generation into this summit.
Okay, great. So Susanna and Guillaume, I'm looking forward for an invitation then. All right.
Sure.
Susanna, just one last question, very quickly. The International Road Federation, could you very briefly tell us about your work, what you're doing in terms of safety and inclusive mobility, very briefly?
How many hours do you have? Well, I like to rebound to the point that was just mentioned. We work a lot with young generations as well. Going back to the safety aspect, we are all laughing, but one fundamental important point and figure you need to keep in mind is that traffic crashes kill 1.4 million people every year. That's another pandemic that unfortunately we have not heard enough so far. And safety is really, or traffic crashes are the leading cause of death of young generation from 529. It's shocking. We're killing the next generation without even realizing that. So a lot of our work within the Federation is working for and with younger generations. We are a platform where the private sector, the public sector, academia, researchers, and civil society can meet to exchange expertise and knowledge. And to find solutions to problems together. We do a lot of advocacy work as well at international and national level. When it comes to road safety, of course, plenty of work within the United Nations. Know for everyone that we just kicked off a new decade of action for road safety. So I think Movin'On will give us the energy that we need now to keep fighting for the next decade and making sure that no one gets killed on our roads.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you, Susanna. Thank you, Guillaume. Looking forward to see you at the summit, and I hope you will be there too. So I have a question for you, ladies and gentlemen. It's a polling question. So are you ready to commit So you can pick A, B, or C. So yes, I'll attend the Moving On Summit. B, I'll join the Moving On movement. Or yes, to both answers, you have a couple of seconds to answer. And this is great feedback for us, so feel free to take some time to answer to this question. So I think I know the answer for you, Guillaume.
Yeah, definitely.
And for Susanna too. I'm guessing which one you guys will pick. So it was a great ride, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you had fun doing the survey and with all the findings, and this was a great journey.
Yeah, and if I may just add one thing, I think there's something very unique within not only the summit, but also the Moving On organization and ecosystem. It's that, as you know, I work for Kantar, a consumer research company and consumer insight, and they truly put consumer at the heart of everything they do. And this is, to my perspective, something that is absolutely necessary, absolutely critical to make things happen, and to make the experimentation working, and to get a feedback from the experimentation. And that's a very virtuous cycle that has been built. So I would say thanks a lot for that Moving On. And that's great.
This is a great platform to say that. Thank you, Guillaume. Thank you, Susanna. And thank you to our lovely audience. So I hope you participated to the polling question. So I'm looking forward to see you all in June. Hopefully, it was great to have you on board with us. Thank you very much to everyone participating and attending our event today. Thank you also to all our guest speakers and all the working groups and all the leaders who came here today to share their feedback with us. I hope that you enjoyed the show. And it's been a pleasure for me. And coming up, the replay in a couple of days on the Moving On platform. Well, that's all for me. Keep safe. Thanks for watching and goodbye.
Thank you, Asha. Bye.